everyone, welcome back to the Critic-Verse. Today we're going to be doing another breakdown and review for the latest episode of Wolfpack, Season 1, Episode 3, titled Origin Point. Before we get to the episode, like, comment, and subscribe for more. Now, let's get to the episode. The episode starts off with the other remaining bus suspects and a new teen character sneaking onto a construction site to take a look at the wildfires from up above. The wildfire looks like a hellscape, to which Phoebe notes that this is the apocalypse, very dramatically. The new character, Cyrus, points out that the stone ridge is where the origin point of the fire is believed to be. Cyrus then says he wasn't on the bus and that his knowledge of fire comes from his dad, who was a firefighter. Phoebe says she has a theory on who she believes set the fires, and that it was Blake Navarro who set them, because Blake changed after her parents got divorced a year ago and stopped hanging out with all her friends, to which Tia notes, does she mean that Blake stopped hanging out with her? During the scene, the Alpha is shown to be stalking and toying with these teens for some reason, crawling on the ceiling underneath them, and then being right beside him, which you can see through the sheet hanging up. But he doesn't attack them for some reason. The cops then show up and haul them down to the station. We then continue off from the events from the last episode, with the pack being taken down to the station for more questioning. Everett's anxiety begins to ramp up, much to Harlan's annoyance, and Blake uses a fidget device to help Everett calm down before they get to the station. At the station, there's a massive crowd of people who have been evacuated from their homes because of the fire. And they look like they're being almost corralled like cattle by the police, sectioning them off to where they live by neighborhoods. While the teens are being escorted inside, Luna has an unnerving effect on a police horse, but it's hard to determine if this actually happened or if this is another one of her hallucinations, because when she's addressed by Kristen Ramsey, the horse goes back to normal like nothing ever happened. Everett points out one of the other bus suspects while Harlan listens in with his wolf hearing, and listening to the chaos around him, another officer starts to get rough with him while escorting them to their seats. We are then introduced to Officer Miller, the antagonist of this episode. Blake spots Phoebe and asks her what they question her on. She tells Blake they asked her about the fires, and Phoebe also says she told them that Blake was the one who said it. Blake can't tell if she's serious or not. We also get to see Phoebe has a not-so-pleasant history with Harlan, as we get the tease that Harlan stole her boyfriend as she flips him off. Everett suggests asking for a lawyer. Harlan rejects the idea because it makes them look guilty and they'll get arrested. Blake says she'd tell the police everything so she wouldn't get arrested, to which Everett questions how much of everything. But Harlan says they need to come up with a shared story they can all stick with. They were all smoking weed, which Everett points out his anxiety makes that impossible, which puts him at odds with Harlan. Also, he points out that they'd be admitting to a crime, but it's a more plausible lie that the police would probably believe. Everett spots Austin and asks if he told the cops what he saw on the highway, which, if you remember on the highway scene, Austin told Everett to get back on the bus before he was pulled away, probably by the Alpha, but Austin claims he didn't see anything on the highway. Just then, Harlan also picks up Luna's heart racing as Austin passes by, noticing that she's into him. And after critiquing her taste in men, Everett is the first called in to be questioned, which makes Blake nervous. We then get a shot of each teen being brought into an interrogation room. Kristen tells Officer Miller, the officer that was seen pushing Harlan, to sit this one out. In the room with Everett, the investigator turns on a white noise machine to tune out the outside distractions, to which Everett notes his therapist uses it, and Kristen says hers does too, trying to find common ground with Everett. They address the fact that Connor is now declared missing, dropping his cast on the table, and assesses the state of it, to which gives them even more questions, and which Officer Jang compares to Everett's situation after he left the hospital without being discharged. While Connor is still being treated like a suspect, Everett asks if he's being treated like a missing person, to which the investigator tries to switch back to being focused on Everett. She then says that they have a witness that puts the pack close to the origin point of the fire, which is the scene from last week's episode. She says it happened earlier today, even though it was supposed to take place almost 2 nights ago. Everett then uses the weed excuse, but because of his lack of knowledge on the subject at hand, he keeps saying the wrong thing to the investigator. Harlan is listening in and getting more annoyed with Everett's answers, to which he says just tell him he took an edible and everyone else smoked. But to his surprise, Everett hears him and repeats that exact thing to the cops. At that moment, it seems the pack is connected and can share Harlan's super hearing ability, and then we get a panning shot across all 4 interrogation rooms. Officer Miller confronts Harlan while Everett nervously asks for a lawyer, but changes his mind and says he wants to speak to his parents. But he remembers he's supposed to be grounded and decides not to call him and asks for a lawyer again. Kristen then gives Everett a lesson on anxiety and how it affects them more before sleep because of a survival instinct, and sleep is where we are at our most vulnerable. And she asks Everett what keeps him up at night. Harlan then has a second altercation with Officer Miller that ends with him thrown up against the wall and unjustly accused of assaulting an officer. Luckily, Garrett Briggs saw everything and comes to his son's rescue, and then threatens Officer Miller to a standstill. Phoebe is then shown leaving the station on the phone with her father, who is an attorney, and he says he wants names and badge numbers so he can make a call to the DA. An interesting note is that he asks her if she's coming home, to which she replies it's the weekend and that she's obviously not coming home. But if she's not going home, where was she going? Just then, her car notifies her she's got no air pressure in her front left tire. When she checks it out, it looks as if someone slashed it. But then, as she gets back in the car, one by one, someone or something slashes the rest of her tires. While Phoebe locks herself in the car, she triggers her alarm to notify someone nearby. Back at the police station, in between the last scene and this one, it seems as if the station has been suddenly cleared of all the evacuees that were there. But it couldn't have been much of a time jump, since Kristen has just been informed that Garrett has come to pick up his kids. To which he says they're lawyering up, but Kristen said that they're just asking them a few questions and that the kids were kind enough to volunteer to be there, to which Blake interjects that she didn't volunteer. Luna then asks Garrett to take Everett and Blake with them because they're like them. In the car, on the way to the Briggs residence, Everett is catching Garrett up on the Connor situation and the mysterious phone caller who is called each of the bitten and how he knew them by name and where they were. Blake asks where they're going, and Briggs says to their home. He'll take them home, but he needs to hear the full story from them, and says whatever bit them came after him too. He relays that on the day he went missing, something hit his truck and drove him to head into the fire line. Back at the precinct, which is suddenly filled with people once again, Officer Miller asks why they aren't arresting those little shits, and Kristen says she doesn't think they did it. Miller notes they were all lying, to which Kristen says they're teenagers. Of course they're lying, but it's probably not related to the fire. Miller says Kristen should have pushed harder and he'd have had them talking in 5 minutes. Officer Jang, picking up on his hostility, tells him his shift is over and he'll meet him at the bar. Man, I thought Jang was an asshole, but Miller takes the cake. Kristen does warn Miller that if he lays a hand on one of the kids again, he's off the task force, to which he seems to comply. At the Briggs residence, they seem to have a process for dealing with the full moon, which involves locking and covering up all the windows. Everett says they also have questions, and Garrett says they should have answers, but they don't know as much as they should. And Blake asks, haven't the twins been... And she won't even say the word werewolves. And Luna says she's like them, which Blake rejects that notion. Garrett then asks Blake and Everett to give him a moment to speak to his kids alone in his office. While in his office, he starts coughing from all the smoke inhalation he suffered, but he then goes on to say he agrees with Blake that the two of them aren't like Luna and Harlan. They were bitten while the two of them were born, so the rules may be different for how they process being werewolves. He then asks if they feel anything from the full moon, and they explain what happened at the police station, how they were all connected, and then how their eyes all glowed when they first met each other. Harlan gets defensive about Garrett's questioning and states the twins have never had a pack and things may change. While Blake stares at the moon, Everett approaches her from behind and starts to hold her, to which she does not retract. And then things heat up between them as Blake turns to him and they kiss before she's brought back to reality by Everett's voice. Everett is still worried about Connor and wants to go look for him, but Blake says they should stay because she's afraid of what she might do to her brother, and she tells Everett she also got a mysterious phone call that she doesn't think was a warning for her, but a warning for her family. Harlan then plays a message he got from Phoebe blaming her slashed tires on Blake. Harlan asks why he got the message, and Everett says it's because Blake doesn't have a phone. Luna asks if Blake did it, and Everett says she was here with them the whole time. How could she? Garrett then asks what's Phoebe's address. Harlan has it. Luna gives him a look, and Harlan says don't ask. Luna figures out Harlan slept with Phoebe's boyfriend in her own house. And just, wow, Harlan's savagery knows no bounds. Garrett tells Everett and Blake to call their parents to tell them they're staying with them tonight, but Everett is supposed to be grounded and Blake was supposed to be watching her brother. Garrett says give him time to check on Phoebe and to lock everything, and they'll talk about it when he gets back. After Garrett leaves, we're shown Officer Miller is sitting right outside the house. Everett then asks Harlan about what the message meant, but Harlan has no clue since he never got it. Luna explains how the full moon affects them, which means they have a few hours to stay safe until it's gone. They then begin to talk about the extent of their abilities, and like I theorized in my first breakdown, they each have a specialty. Harlan has his hearing, Blake has speed, Everett has strength, and Luna has a strong sense of smell. Everett then tests the hearing connection with his phone, but only Harlan can hear it. But Luna can smell something, and suddenly they all can. They start to smell acid, which is apparently what anger smells like. They get a knock at the door, and it's Officer Miller, who says he has some additional questions for them. Blake says they don't have to talk to him, nor can he enter the home without their permission, to which he asks Harlan to come out, and Harlan tells Blake and Everett to go into Garrett's office to not let the officer know that they're there. As Everett locks the door to the office, he turns around to see Blake staring at him seductively. She then pulls him in for a kiss. Things start to get spicy between them on Garrett's desk, only for Everett to be snapped back to reality by Blake questioning him, asking him if he still feels the full moon. To which he says, "Yeah, I feel it." Miller is then shown physically assaulting Harlan, throwing him against the side of the house, asking him if he set the fire repeatedly, and he continues to hurt Harlan while Luna is on the phone with Garrett, and Garrett turns around and begins to head back to the house. He is now pressing Harlan's face against the wall, angrily asking him for the truth. Suddenly, Harlan starts to hear the aggressive stomps of the beast running towards them. And as the beast gets to the home, he grabs Officer Miller but leaves Harlan alone. Harlan then runs back inside and tells Luna that the Alpha is outside, and Garrett tells Harlan to get to the stable where there's a special rifle in the supply cabinet. They check if the coast is clear and run for the stables, but don't tell Blake and Everett. Blake and Everett come out the office only to find the house deserted. Blake suggests that they leave out the back and that they shouldn't worry about what's out there. Everett then gets a phone call from the mysterious person telling them not to leave the house and that they're almost safe since the moon is past its peak. Don't leave the house. He doesn't seem to answer any of their questions though. Officer Miller is then shown in the woods, gun out of his holster, and the Alpha staring him down. Harlan and Luna are in the stables trying to get the rifle. While on the phone getting the combination from Garrett, she begins to hallucinate the same white horse from the last episode. Harlan snaps her out of it, trying to get the combo from her. The Alpha drags Officer Miller as he tries to get away, but he is then thrown against a tree the same way he had Harlan, and the Alpha crushes his skull right after breaking his arm. Blake and Everett try to sneak out of the house, only to be confronted by the Alpha, who gets an up-close and personal sniff of Everett right before Harlan shoots at it and it takes off. They figure out that the Alpha doesn't want to kill them anymore because they're a part of his pack. In the final scene, Garrett gets home to find the pack all in the living room silent. Harlan picks up one of the bullets from the rifle, which he states are pure silver, and asks Garrett if he made them to kill werewolves. And Luna asks if he made it to kill them, to which Garrett says yes to both. And the episode ends right there. Wow, this episode definitely ramped up the speed compared to the first two, but it's also the shortest episode compared to the first two. This episode had a 44-minute runtime, while the first two were around 50 minutes each, but another banger episode nonetheless. Now, let's get to the review and theories. Something that's been bugging me about the cop interrogation scenes is that where I'm from, you can't question a minor without their parents being present for the questioning. But I looked it up, and in California, a minor can be questioned so long as it's voluntary. So as soon as Blake said she didn't volunteer in front of Garrett, she was allowed to leave, unless they could arrest her for something. The teens also seem to be conveniently all connected. Austin, Tia, and Phoebe know each other and are shown hanging out together. Luna has a crush on Austin. Harlan stole Phoebe's boyfriend. Blake and Phoebe used to be friends, and Connor and Everett are friends. I know it's high school, but it just feels super convenient how close that they all are and that they're all suspects. Once again, the mysterious caller just seems to know wherever they are. Maybe he's also psychically connected to them as they are to the rest of the pack. But he also has their phone numbers, which is a strange thing to note. The pack also seems to share abilities in moments of stress, like at the police station where they all shared Harlan's super hearing. And secondly, when they all shared Luna's sense of smell after she smelled the cops' hatred outside of the house. Also, MVP moment was the Alpha standing up against police brutality. Just want to throw that out there. And a theory that I've had for the last 3 episodes is that I think that the Alpha isn't a man, but a woman, because they keep calling it their real father, but never seem to wonder about their mother. So I think that the show is just trying to subvert our expectations with the identity of the Alpha, and when it's revealed, it's going to be a woman. I know some people think it might be Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, and that she's actually the Alpha trying to find her kids, Harlan and Luna. I'm not quite sure that it's her character though, to be honest. Okay, everyone, that's it for this week. Remember, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. See you next week on the Critic-Verse.